All right, data sheets. Let's talk about data sheets, John.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right, so we're looking at the dynasty keyword, what that means. Basically, every unit in your detachment is from a dynasty. They're going to get a bonus. And we went over what those dynasty rules are in one of our earlier overviews. So tune into that to check it out and see which one is going to best fit with your army.
As we had planned from the start for this to be multiple videos.
Yeah, of course. Duh. All right, then we have war gear, which they detail later on, and abilities. So they go over 2 or 3 main abilities. Dimensional translocation, which basically is you can set this unit up in hyperspace in a hyperspace dimension instead of setting it up on the battlefield. If you do so, then in the reinforcement step, your movement phase, you can set the unit up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy models. So it's very similar to a teleport or death from the skies or whatever that other armies will get. So deep strike. Then we have living metal. So at the start of your command phase now, instead of at the start of your turn, each model with this rule regains 1 lost wound. So that's pretty nice. All the Necron characters, for the most part, have that. All their vehicles have that. All their monsters have that. And in fact, now, any unit that has multiple wounds gains this rule as well. Because it was weird before when you could lose like half of a destroyer, like 2 wounds off of a destroyer, and his buddy got back up on full wounds, and yet he was stuck on 1 wound left until he actually died. He could only get better by dying first, I guess. I don't know. And then reanimation protocols. Let's see here. They did spoil reanimation protocols on Games Workshop's website, so I'm probably not going to touch on those just because it is a very long and complicated rule. I appreciate that it is long, and I do appreciate the example at the bottom because there is an alternative way to read reanimation protocols. I think if you read the example and read the actual text of the rule, you'll find it to be pretty straightforward. It's a little bit of a nerf if units have lots of wounds, so a 4 or 3 wound unit is going to suffer a lot, but a 2 wound unit is probably going to be roughly the same, and a 1 wound unit is better, I think, almost in every way. So just something to consider. It's really good. There's a lot of other ways to regen models from units, especially if they're core, and even more so if they're warriors, because warriors get back up fairly easily, as they should. And then we have command protocols. So if every unit from your army, excluding dynastic agents, Satan shards, and unaligned units, so that would be like your ye old Sky Shield landing pad, like
spindle drones.
Spindle drones when you want to take those. You'll get the dynastic. You'll get these dynastic command protocols. And so the command protocols, when they're enacted, you have to be close to a Necron character. You also have to have a noble in your army list. And your warlord, actually. If you don't have a noble unit as your warlord, you can't use the command protocols. And then after each side is deployed, you secretly decide what your command codes are going to be. So there are 6 different command codes. You pick all of them and determine which turn each one is going to be enacted in. The 6th one is thrown away. You actually have to rip it up in front of your opponent. You're supposed to have these all written on Nice Games Workshop cards, and you have just tear it up.
The sale of GW cards,
right?
You just rip up one command protocol again.
So new command protocol cards, $5 per pack. Just so you're aware. No, I'm just kidding. But for dramatic effect, it would be really baller if you did rip up a card in front of your opponent and told them that it was the card, and I don't need this to beat you. Anyway, a unit only benefits from them if they're within 6 inches of a Necron character as well. So Necron characters are super important for this army, and you definitely want to have a lot. And there's some cool ways that you can kind of take multiple characters for 1 slots, especially Cryptex. So you have the Protocol of the Eternal Guardian, which is either if a unit didn't move, then it gets light cover, or if an enemy unit declares a charge, if an enemy unit declares a charge against a unit that's not in engagement range of an enemy unit, you can either set to hold or hold steady or set to defend. And this is just like being in a piece of defensive terrain without having to be in a piece of defensive terrain. And so you pick, when the protocol comes up, you pick one of these 2 abilities, and this is for every protocol. one of the 2 directives. Now, the named dynasties all get one of these that they get both the benefits from. So, for instance, Nihilak gets both of the benefits from the Eternal Guardian. So they get to set to defend and get light cover as long as they don't move. So that's a really great turn 1 ability. Protocol of the Sudden Storm is add 1 inch to the movement characteristic of units that benefit from it. And if a unit is performing an action, it can make attacks with ranged weapons without the action failing. So super good if you want to try and do a bunch of actions in one turn, but don't want to decrease the amount of firepower that your army is bringing out. You've got Protocol of the Vengeful Stars. And this one is Nephrak gets both. Protocol of the Vengeful Stars is the Mephrit one that gets both. And so these directives are: each time a model makes a ranged attack, an unmodified wound roll of 6 improves the AP by 1. And then each time a model in a unit makes a ranged attack that targets a unit within half range, the targets don't get cover. So that's pretty good, especially if it's like a dense board. You can choose between them not getting cover or just getting extra AP on 6s to wound. Protocol of the Hungry Void. Directive 1 is the same thing as the Vengeful Stars, but for melee. So if you roll 6 to wound, an extra AP minus 1. Or just +1 strength if they were charged, or performed heroic intervention. And so no vote gets both of those. That one's really solid, man. Like if you like the Necron units can get. A lot of the close combat units are strength 6 or strength 7, so you get up to strength 8 pretty easily on normal attacks is very powerful. So that makes for a decent melee threat. Protocol of the Undying Legions. Each time a unit uses its Living Metal ability, it heals 1 additional wound. And then each time you make Reanimation Protocol rolls for this, you can re-roll 1 of the dice. So that's pretty nice, especially if you're close or on a 3-wound unit or something like that. And the Caesarcan dynasty gets this benefit and gets both of them. And then Protocol of the Conquering Tyrant. Add 3 inches to the range of aura abilities, and also 3 inches to Lord's Will, My Will Be Done, and Rites of Reanimation as well. So that's nice. And then Directive 2, when an eligible unit. This unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back, just your -1 to hit. So that's pretty good. That's a great one, especially that's a great mid-turn or mid-game kind of protocol. So I think picking these in the right order against the right opponents is going to be really important, and kind of knowing what your plan is. And then that may affect your opponents' want to actually get up in there and fight with you. So that could mess with their plan, and that's good for you. All right. So, some very dense pages, but let's get on to some data sheets, baby. All right, we got Imhotep. Imhotep hasn't changed a lot. He's changed a little bit. First of all, his Gauntlet of Fire has gone from a regular flamer to a heavy flamer, and it also went up to the 12-inch range, which is great. His Staff of the Destroyer is still the same. He's still got Living Metal. He gets command protocols. He's got My Will Be Done. And this is for only core units now, not for any unit. So keep that in mind. And then he gets Relentless March as well. And note that while he's not core and doesn't benefit from his own aura, all the characters that have the Relentless March aura ability all get +1 movement in their profile. So they're all movement 6 as opposed to movement 5 for most Necrons. He's still got the Phase Shifter. His Lord of the Storm got better. So you pick an unengaged... or select an enemy model within 48. It doesn't have to be unengaged. Roll 1d6 for each other enemy unit within 6 of them. On a 4+, they take D3 mortals, as opposed to just it was on a 6 they took mortals. And on a 4+, that unit takes 3 mortal wounds. It was before on a 2+, you did D3 mortal wounds to your target, and then you rolled on 6s for the units next to them. So I think that's a huge benefit. That's very powerful. And he's got Grand Strategist, which means if he's your Warlord, you get 2 extra command points, which is really nice. I like that quite a bit. And he has the Pharaon rule, so he can use this My Will Be Done on 2 units instead of just 1. So super solid. Imhotep went down 5 points as well. So I think he's a very good choice. Like, if you want to play Sawtek, I think you take Sawtek because of the characters are pretty good, as we'll see a little bit later, and maybe keep playing with those. I think there's some really solid ones in here. Orican the Diviner. He lost a couple of wounds in his empowered profile. So he was 7 wounds, and now he's back down to his normal 5 wounds. He's got the Staff of Tomorrow, which you don't get to take invulnerable saves against, which is pretty nice. So he's got 4 Strength 7 attacks with no invulnerable saves. That's not bad. Let's see here. He's got Master Chronomancer. So you pick a Necron unit within 9 inches of him, and they get a 5-up invulnerable save. So same as the normal Chronomancer. Or is the normal Chronomancer 6? I don't know. He's got a 9-inch bubble with that. He's got Prescient Strike. So he gets to fight first in the fight phase because he knows what's going to happen. He's got this Time Splinter Mantle, so he has a 4-up invulnerable save. He has a 4+ armor save as well. And then he's got the Stars Are Right. So same thing. If you can roll below the turn number, then he gets to use his superpowered profile. We got Anrakir the Traveler. So he's cool in that his are just like not Sawtech core, it's just Necron core models. He gets to use My Will Be Done and the Relentless Aura. So he's not, because he's a dynastic agent now, he doesn't count against you for your dynasty. So you can take him in whatever army. And he's still got the same +1 strength over a normal overlord. So his War Scythe is strength 8, which is pretty nice. He still gives a +1 attack aura to Necron core units within 6. They get +1 attack, which is nice. And then he still gets to take over other enemy vehicles. So you pick a vehicle within 12, roll 3d6 or 2d6 if the vehicle is Titanic. If you equal or beat its leadership, you get to fire one of its guns with Anrakir's ballistic skill. So 2+, which is nice. So the best thing, my favorite thing to do with that is a vehicle that doesn't have very many, that has like limited shots on its weapons, like a Manticore. Like if you can steal one of its missiles, and you're like, okay, not only do you not get to shoot this, but you also can't shoot it for the rest of the game.
Death Strike Missile.
Yeah, or Death Strike Missile. That's pretty cool. All right, then we got Vargard Oberon. So this guy is Nemesis Xandrek's like little buddy. He gets dimensional translocation, so he can teleport if he wants to. He basically has the same stats as he did before, although he did go up +1 attack. Actually, Imhotep went up +1 attack, and Anrakir also went +1 attack. All the overlords went up +1 attack, so they're 4 attacks now, which is good. Makes them a little bit more threatening. He still gets, if you kill him, he gets to pile in and fight. He has the Lord's Will. Now, the Lord's Will is an ability that Necron Lords have, and it's different than it was before. It used to be a 6-inch bubble of reroll ones to wound, and now you pick a Necron core unit within 9 inches, and they get to reroll 1s to hit. So pretty nice when you combine Lord's Will and My Will Be Done, so that you get, like most units are hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. That's pretty solid. He's got Vargard's Duty. So this is the new bodyguard rule that I was talking about, whereas before he could take wounds from Nemesis Xandrek on a 2+. Now, Vargard's Duty is an aura. When a friendly Nemesis Xandrek model is within 3 inches of him, enemy models cannot target him with attacks. So melee, ranged, whatever, if Nemesis Xandrek is within 3 inches of Vargard Oberon, you can't target Nemesis Xandrek with attacks. That's really cool. Oh, sorry, it is ranged attacks. No, my bad. It isn't melee attacks. You can fight him and kill him if you want to, but you shouldn't because he's cool. He also gets Relentless March, and all the lords, overlords, and also the Royal Wardens now have Relentless March, which is nice. And then he still has his Ghostwalk Mantle, so he can teleport himself and a unit within 3 inches of Nemesis Xandrek if he wants to, which is nice. Yep. Oh, and if you include Nemesis Xandrek, you get Vargard Oberon without taking up a slot.
Nice.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, Illuminator Cerzas. And this guy is, or Cesaris, he is more or less the same as his printed version in Pariah, but he does have some other abilities too. So instead of his +1 to Reanimation, he gets Rites of Reanimation. So this is a thing that Technomancers get. And what it does is it lets you select one Necron core unit within 6 inches. One destroyed model from that unit is reanimated. You don't roll for it, it's just reanimated. It comes back. So if it has 2 wounds, it comes back with full 2 wounds, everything else. If it's Necron Warrior unit, if it's a Necron Warriors unit, add D3 instead. And each unit can only be selected by this ability once per phase. So you can't do the same unit a bunch of times, which is fine. Then he has the Empiric Overcharger. When a Psychic unit is within 12 inches, each time a Psychic test is taken for that unit, it perils on any doubles instead of 1s and 6s. He's got the Atomic Energy Manipulator. In the fight phase, if this model destroys one or more enemy models, and then at the end of its phase, you can use the Mechanical Augmentation ability as if it were the end of your movement phase. So he can do it twice in a turn. And Mechanical Augmentation is now any Necron core instead of just Warriors or Immortals. And so you roll a d3, and they get this effect permanently for the rest of the game. +1 strength, +1 toughness, or +1 ballistic skill. So still really good on Immortals and Warriors. But you can use it on any of the core choices that Necrons get. Nemastor Xandrek. Man, this guy got better. So, still an Overlord stats, so 4 attacks. He's got a 2-up armor save, which is a nice little buff. Excuse me. And he has My Will Be Done, as you would expect. Relentless March also. But his special abilities are... Excuse me. Let me drink some water. Alright. His abilities are counter tactics. So once per battle, when your opponent declares they will use a stratagem during a battle round, but before any command points are spent, this model can engage its counter tactics. If it does, your opponent cannot use that stratagem for this battle round. So once per battle, he can just be like, yeah, that stratagem that you're going to use, no. Like, or if it's a critical round, I know you're engaging with an army like Death Guard or Chaos Space Marines, you can say, no, you can't use Veterans of the Long War this entire battle round, which is very powerful. So, like, you can potentially really swing a game-swinging turn off of that. And then he's got Transient Madness, so this is very similar to the previous ability he had. So you pick a Sotek core unit within 9 inches and roll 3d6. If it's equal to or less than his leadership, then you can roll a d3 on this chart, which is +1 attack, +1 weapon, or +1 ballistic skill, or reroll charge rolls. So any of those are really great for units, especially like, this is a way that you can, with him and Anrakir and the stratagem, you can get your Lichguard up to 6 attacks apiece, which is pretty cool. So if you wanted to play the melee game, you can play it like that pretty easily. Trazine the Infinite. So Trazine the Infinite, of course, is the guy who Pokemon's all 40K's greatest characters. Or worst characters. I don't know. So we still got the Empathic Obliterator, which is the same if he kills a character, all enemy units within 6 inches take D3 mortal wounds, and it's a 4-staff. And then he's got a 4-up Invul save, My Will Be Done. He's got the Surrogate Host ability, where on a 2+, he just replaces another Necron character instead of dying, which is nice. And he comes back with 3 wounds, which is cool. Yeah. And he also gets Relentless March, but he also has a new ability called Ancient Collector, and this one's really flavorful and fluffy. I like it quite a bit. If this model is included in your army, it's the Dynastic Heirloom Stratagem. Costs 1 fewer command points the first time you use it than it normally would. If he's in your Crusade force, the Relic Requisition costs 0 command points. So he's like, yeah, the first relic's free. The next one is going to cost you, though. That's super cool. Getting the free relic is really nice with the character. All right, so we got the Royal Warden. Royal Warden is exactly the same as he was in Dominus, with one exception. He gets the Relentless March ability. So a 6-inch aura of +1 to move and advance on core units. Scorpec Lord is literally... Oh, he did go down 5 points. He's now 75 points, which is quite nice. Scorpec Lord is 130 still and has exactly the same rules. He's still pretty good. He does have the Destroyer Cult keyword, and he is the Scorpec Lord, so he can use their stratagem. The old Destroyer Lord is renamed the Locust Lord. And he is mostly the same. He did go to 4 attacks, which is nice, but he still is only weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+. He can still take a phylactery. The phylacteries are great. That lives in Living Metal D3 instead of just 1. Or you can give him a Res Orb, which is, I think, more valuable. You can also still give him a War Scythe as opposed to the Staff of Light and a couple of other options. And then he gives reroll 1s to wound all the time for Locust units. No, just Destroyer Cult units, I'm sorry. And that's another thing the Scorpec Lord does, is he also works for any Destroyer Cult unit. They get to reroll 1s to wound. So a nice ability. The Necron Lord is more or less the same. Same attacks, same weapon options. He can still take he can still take the Res Orb, which is great. And he has Lord's Will, which we talked about with Vargard Oberon. And then also he has the Relentless March ability as well, which is great. You can spread that out. And he is a noble, which is important because the Royal Warden is not. And neither are the Destroyer Lords. The Catacomb Command Barge, same points. Roughly, it has My Will Be Done, so it doesn't get the 12-inch aura wave of command that it used to, which was nice. But it does have the new Quantum Shielding rule, and this is the first time we've seen this. So as before, Quantum Shielding, you roll a d6. If you roll equal to the damage rolled or done by a unit, you could stop. You stop the attack. You take no damage. Now, it is. You can only be wounded on a 4 or better, so you get Transhuman Physiology and a 5+ Invulnerable save, which is quite nice. So it definitely makes him pretty tough. Still has the same options: Void Blade, War Scythe, Staff of Light, Hyperphase Sword. All of those are still in there. He cannot take the Void Scythe, though. That's only for the Overlord on foot. And he has a 12-inch move still, which is great, and he still gets Relentless March. All right. He is a noble, though, so he does count for that. Because he is, an overlord on a canoe. So then you have the normal overlord. No new abilities for him other than his extra attack. Still 5 wounds, still toughness 5, still strength 5, all that stuff. He is movement 6, but again, that's because they threw in Relentless March for him. Yeah. Oh, and he can, if he doesn't have a Tachyon arrow, he can take a Res Orb, which is cool. All right, now we get to the Cryptex. Cryptex are some big changes. Oh, and just as the Overlord did go to 95 points base, and you do have to pay for the War Scythe 5 points, and the Res Orb is 30. So just be aware of that. He can cost a pretty penny. All right, so we've got a Technomancer. The Technomancer is, again, the replacement for the normal Cryptek. He has 2 different pieces of special war gear that you can buy for him, and this is kind of, you can choose what role you want him to play. So the Canoptic Cloak gives him movement 10 and fly. In addition, at the end of your movement phase, you can repair 1 friendly Dynasty model, so it doesn't matter what kind it is. It could be a Necron Lord, it could be a monster, it could be a vehicle, it could be a destroyer. They regain D3 lost wounds. Each model can only be repaired once per turn. And then you have the Canoptic Control Node. The bear has the following ability: Control Node. While a friendly Dynasty Canoptic unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. So this is really great. It's good for the Canoptic units that shoot and fight. Just you have to be kind of close for that to pop off. But still a really great piece of war gear. So he has Living Metal, Command Protocols. He's got Dynastic Advisors. So if your model is Battleforged, then each Cryptek unit included a detachment that also contains at least 1 noble unit, a second Cryptek unit, excluding Dynastic Agents, can be included in that detachment without taking up an additional battlefield roll slot. So you get 2 for 1 Cryptex, which is really nice, and their points are pretty low. The Chronomancer is 80, the Technomancer is 75, and both the Psychomancer and the Plasmamancer are both 70. So they're pretty cheap and they do good stuff. And then he has Rites of Reanimation that we talked about, same as Caesaris, but he can only do it once per turn, whereas Caesaris can do it twice. Psychomancer, same stats as a normal Cryptek. He's got the Abyssal Lance, so 18 inches, Assault 3, Strength 4, -3 AP, 1 damage. And the same stats in melee, more or less, with all of his 1 attack. He has the Dynastic Advisors rule as well, and then he has Harbinger of Despair. So this one wasn't previewed. They previewed the Nightmare Shroud aura, but the Harbinger of Despair is really good. So in your morale phase, you can select one enemy unit within 12 inches of him and roll 3d6. If the result is greater than the enemy unit's leadership characteristic, select one of the results on opposite to take effect until the start of your next movement phase. Each unit can only be selected for this ability once per phase. So, selected unit cannot perform actions, and if it's doing an action, the action fails. It's done. You can't do it anymore. 2, the selected unit loses OBSEC. 3, have advance and charge rolls made for the selected unit. If selected, the unit cannot fire Overwatch or defend, or set to defend, and is not eligible to fight until all their units have done so. So you can do fight last, you can remove OBSEC. Like, he's a really great toolbox for just debuffing your opponent. In addition, he has a -1 leadership aura within 6 inches. And enemy units also subtract 1 from combat attrition tests that they have to make. So there's even more. So a unit below half fails half combat attrition tests. So that's pretty good. Chronomancer. So the Chronomancer has either an Aeon Stave or an Entropic Lance for weapons. So the Aeon Stave is Assault D3, Strength 5, -2, and you can't take invulnerable saves against it. And it's Strength User, -2 in melee. Same thing, no invul saves. He also can use the Entropic Lance, and that is 18 inches, Assault 1, Strength 8, -3, D3 plus 3 damage. Which is pretty good from just a character, like a little las cannon or a little melt-a-gun kind of. And then it's strength user -3 AP, 3 flat damage in melee. So it's like a little thunder hammer. And then he also gets to make 2 attacks with his chrono tendrils. Those are his feet.
Spooky.
Spook. So he has Living Metal, Command Protocols, Dynastic Advisor. He also has a Time Splinter Mantle, so he gets a 4-up invul save, which is nice. And then he has the Chronometron, so pick a Dynasty unit within 9 inches, and they get a 5-up invul save. The final unit is the Plasmancer. Plasmancer did change a little bit, a very small amount. So he got Dynastic Agents. He's got the Living Lightning that he had before. But his Harbinger of Destruction ability, at the end of your movement phase, if this model did not fall back, roll 3d6. For each 4+, the closest enemy unit within 24 inches invisible to this model takes a mortal wound. It used to be just 18. So it did get boosted out to 24, and that's a nice way to just throw a couple of mortal wounds on something that's pretty close. So spamming 3 of those is probably not a terrible choice. And those are the characters. And so next up, we've got Necron Warriors. So Necron Warriors brings us to our first core unit. There are not a lot of core units for Necrons. It's mostly Canoptic units or vehicles or destroyers. Those destroyer units are not core, and so you're not going to get any of the benefits from I Will Be Done and that kind of stuff. But I think the Necron core is very strong. I think a strong core of Warriors and Immortals is going to do a lot of work for you. So the things that are core are Necron Warriors, Immortals, Litchguard, Toon Blades, and Death Marks. So those are your core choices. Necron Warriors literally did not change at all, except they went up 1 point. So they're 13 points a model. From Indominus. So they also get Reanimation, they also get Command Protocols, and they also have their number as Legion. They can reroll 1s for Reanimation, which is nice. Immortals, so they got a stat boost pretty heavily. They got their stats boosted pretty heavily. They got +1 toughness, they're T5, and have a 2 attack space, which is nice. They have the Gauss Blaster went up to 30 inches instead of 24. Rapid Fire 1, Strength 5 -2, 1 damage. And the Tesla stayed the same, except it's an unmodified 6, not a 6+ to hit. So even if you're getting a minus, you're still exploding on 6s. But unfortunately, with all the bonuses that Necrons get to hit, they're never exploding on anything better than that. And they still get Reanimation Protocols and Reanimation and Command Protocols. Next, we have the Canoptic Reanimator. And so he changed a little bit. His stats stayed the same, which is unfortunate. I was hoping for him to get a little bit tougher or have like Quantum Shielding or something. but he's still very fragile. So he's still 100. Oh, sorry. Immortals are 17 points a model, plus 2 points if you want to take Tesla carbines. So they went down a point for Goss, but plus 1 point for Tesla. Anyway, back to Canoptic Reanimator. He now explodes, so on a 6, he'll deal 1 mortal wound to everything within 3. And his Nanoscarab Reanimation Beam went from a 9-inch bubble to a 6-inch bubble, so it's going to be a little bit harder to have him hide behind a building or something like that and still affect like the middle of the table like you were able to do before. And he's one of the only ways, though, that you can get +1 to reanimation, so I think you'll see him in a lot of lists that kind of really... a lot of lists that really quite like reanimation protocols. Next, we have the Hexmark Destroyer, and so he is a character, and he's a hyperspace hunter. So what that means is, since he's a hyperspace hunter, he can counter deploy people, which is kind of cool. So if something comes down, he can deploy after them and then shoot the ever-living bejesus out of them. So he's got 6 pistols, which are strength 6, -1 AP, 1 damage. Anytime he makes a basic ranged attack, you can ignore any hit penalties or ballistic skill modifiers, and you don't get cover against him. In addition, when he overwatches, he hits on 2s instead of 6s. And then he has the multi-threat Illuminator, so anytime he kills a guy, he gets to make another shot with the pistols, which is nice. It's not quite as good as the Kellermorph, who just gets to make extra shots if he hits. And his pistols aren't quite as good, I feel like. I'd rather have 6 shots that do 2 damage than 6 shots that do 1 damage. And then he also gets to reroll 1s to hit, which is nice for shooting. Or just in combat in general. And toughness 5, 5 wounds, and a 4 attacks is pretty solid. Yeah, and he can also has the dimensional translocation, so he can teleport. All right. Next up, we've got Litchguard. Litchguard are another one of the core choices that you can have. They are 28 points a model. The last guy was 75 points, if I didn't say that before. Anyway, 28 points a model, so they did go down a couple of points. Their rules pretty much didn't change, except for the Dispersion Shield. There's no stratagem that lets you reflect shots back to people, which is sad because that was a fun rule. But it was really annoying to figure out what was happening with it. Their Dispersion Shields now, though, give them 4-up invul save and +1 to armor saves. So just like the Storm Shields that Marines get, which is nice. And the Dispersion Shields and Hyperphase Swords and the War Scythes all cost the same points, so it doesn't matter which one you pick. They all have to be armed the same way. The one thing that did change on them quite a bit is the Guardian protocols. And so while a friendly dynastic infantry noble or an infantry noble or dynastic agent infantry noble is within 3 inches of this unit, enemy units cannot target them with ranged weapons. So no sniping characters. It's not a 2+ pass off wounds. It's just you can't even shoot them. So you better kill those Litchguard first. No easy feat. Then you have Deathmarks. Deathmarks went up to 18 points a model, so a significant increase, but they also got a lot better. So they got 2-up ballistic skill, they got toughness 5, which is really great, and the Synaptic Disintegrator went from a bolter that did mortal wounds on 6s and ignored Lookout Sir to a 36-inch range heavy 1, strength 5, -2, 1 damage that ignores Lookout Sir and does mortal wounds on 6s. And so they are a hyperspace hunter, so they can deep strike and shoot people, or they can just sit on objectives and shoot people too. That's fine. Because 36 inches is a long way to go, and they're pretty tough at toughness 5 and a 3-up armor save. Flayed ones. Man, those new Flayed One models are so cool. I'm very looking forward to getting my hands on some of those. So Flayed ones went down to 13 points a model, which is great. So they cost the same as Warriors. However, they're not core, so they don't get quite the same benefits. They get dimensional translocation, so they can deep strike, which is great. And then they still get 3 attacks with their Flare Claws. Now the Flare Claws are -1 AP now, and they have Flesh Hunger. So as long as they're attacking a non-vehicle model, they get 6 score and extra hit, which is nice. And their aura, while within 3 inches of them, you're -2 leadership. So that was better than your -1 leadership if they do a wound to you. Because apparently seeing them wear your dead buddy's face isn't scary enough until they actually hurt you. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of clowns.
I'm gonna paint them all with like clown makeup.
Just the skins. Yeah. And then Crypto Thralls. Crypto Thralls are exactly the same as they were before. They're the same points, same abilities, same attacks. They're still very good. I quite like them, and they're a cheap little unit that does work. All right. Scorpack Destroyers. So a lot of people were bummed that these guys weren't units of 6. Well, be bummed no longer, because you can take them in units up to 6. So they're pretty tough. They have a lot of attacks. They did not get any other special rules other than Living Metal. So yeah, you should probably take some because they're still really good. One thing that did change is the Canoptic Plasmacide is no longer an upgrade for the unit, but instead a separate unit that you purchase. And so my idea when I had read in the battle report that they were a separate unit, I was like, oh, cool, I'm just going to have him follow the destroyers around and, like, do actions. Like, set on objectives, do stuff like that. Well, it turns out Games Workshop was smarter than me, and they figured out that, yeah, you can't do that. That would not be a good idea. So you can't. So he has a bunch of special rules to make sure that he has to stick close to them. So, like, he has to be in the check coherency phase. If he's not within 6 inches of any destroyer cult units, he dies. He still can overcharge them with the Infused Madness. And if you roll a 1, it doesn't matter if the model's destroyed. All the other models still get the +1 strength, +1 attacks. And yeah, you can't shoot him if he's within 3 inches of a destroyer cult unit. Unless he's the closest eligible target. So he gets kind of like Lookout Sir if he's close to them. And you can take him for out of slot for each destroyer unit, for each destroyer cult unit in your detachment, which is kind of cool. Then we have the Triarch Stalker. Triarch Stalker got some major buffs. So he's got command protocols. He's got the new quantum shielding, which is pretty good. He's still got the same targeting relay. So each time this model makes a ranged attack against an enemy unit, if a hit is scored, so you do have to hit now. You can't just shoot. You can't just look at them. Until the end of the phase, each time a friendly Necron unit makes an attack against them, reroll once to hit. And he explodes for D3 mortals. He did go up to 12 wounds from 10, and he got the heat raise the same. Oh no, it got the better melt roll. So D6 +2 within half range instead of roll 2 and take the best. And the particle shredder got a lot better. Heavy 8, strength 6 -1, 2 damage. And the heavy Gauss cannons are 6 shots, strength 7 -3 AP, D3 damage. And his Stalker forelimbs got a lot better. They went -1 AP, and instead of D3 damage, they do 3 flat damage. So he gets 3 attacks at that. That's pretty good. 3 little Thunderhammers. All right. Satan. So I think there's probably going to be... Oh, and he's about 150 points, roughly. The Scorpack Destroyers went down 5 points a model, so they're now 35, which is a great deal. Those will be taken quite a bit. So, Satan. I think initially there's going to be a lot of shock and maybe some outrage that people have. Like, I think outrage is pretty stupid, but like, you know, whatever. People are going to be people. All the Satan, you can see by their power ratings that they went up substantially in points, but they also went up quite a bit in power level. And not literal power level, but like their level of power is higher. So
literally
figuratively
and metaphorically.
Yeah. So the Satan all got Living Metal, which I think is great. Letting them heal a wound every turn is awesome, especially because they got the new Necrodermis, which means they can only take 3 wounds maximum per phase. Like, if you can hide them after they get hit one turn and you let them heal twice, like, that's a whole nother round that they can stay active, which is very powerful. So, the Deceiver. He got a semi-improved stat line, -1 strength, but +1 attack, +1 wound. He still has a 4-up invulnerable save, and he has a 4-up armor save, which means that things like Grav still don't get multi-damage against him, which is pretty nice. He's also got dimensional translocation, so you can teleport him if you so desire. He has the Grand Illusion special rule. At the start of the first turn, you can select up to 3 friendly Necron units, remove those units from the battlefield, and then set them up anywhere on the battlefield that is wholly within your deployment zone. If the mission you were playing on uses strategic reserves, you can then instead place those units in strategic reserves instead. Now, this is going to require a little bit of an FAQ, and it's different than his previous ability. So previously, Grand Illusion was D3 units, and you got to put them anywhere on the table that was outside of 12 inches. They just couldn't assault the first turn. Now it's just like letting you kind of play around in your own deployment zone, which is still very powerful because you get to see like if your opponent's going to go first or not, so you can hide some valuable units that you kind of put forward to push or not. I don't know if he has to be on the table to use this, and I don't know if you have to pay command points for putting your units in strategic reserve if you use his ability. If you don't have to pay command points for that, then he is amazing. That is a great ability. Especially if your opponent's set up to like counter some move or something that you did, you can just be like, no, they're not going to be on the table. Sorry. Thanks for playing. So he also knows the Cosmic Insanity Satan power and another one, and can use 2 powers instead of just 1. So before he was limited to 1 power every turn, even though he knew to. Now he gets to use both of his powers every single turn, which is great. Man, the Nightbringer got a huge buff. John, are you afraid of the Nightbringer now?
Now I am.
Yeah. So the Nightbringer is same stat line more or less, except he got an extra wound and an extra 2 attacks. So he's 6 attacks now. He lost his shooting attack, and to replace it, because the shooting attack is now effectively a Satan power, to replace it, he got 2 different modes for his War Scythe. Or it's not his War Scythe, but his Scythe. The Scythe of the Nightbringer, in fact. So he can either do a sweeping blow, or reaping sweep, if you will. And this lets you do 2 attacks for every attack, and it's strength 7 -3, 1 damage. And then Entropic Blow, man, this one's so good for killing big stuff, is just normal attacks times 2 strength, so strength 14, -4 AP, D6 damage, no invulnerable saves. Brutal, man. Do you think the Nightbringer could take Mortarion now? I kind of think he might be able to.
And then any of the greater demons, because they're just straight no getting saves.
Oh. And it's especially good against these models with Feel No Pain and that kind of stuff, because he has the Drain Life rule, which means that you can't ignore any of the wounds that he does to you with abilities that let you like roll to ignore damage or to get back up. I don't even think you get reanimation protocols against him.
He's pretty good though.
Maybe you do. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, he's great. Again, Necrodermis, he's got Reality Unravels, so he explodes when he dies. One thing about these guys too, I said that they got the Necrodermis, but I didn't say that they got Enslaved Star God. Mm-hmm. And so this rule means that they can't have Warlord traits, they can't take relics, and enemy models get to ignore Lookout Sir. So you can always target the Satan if you want to. But to be fair, if he's throwing heavy weapons at your Satan, like that's not the worst thing in the world. I think that's probably fine.
And it's still max 3 wounds a phase.
Right. Now, you can't use Dynastic Codes to heal them 2 wounds because they don't have the Dynastic Code special rule. So get that out of your head right away.
Done.
Losers. All right. So I do not mean that. The last one is Shard of the Void Dragon. They previewed a lot of his rules, including his stat line and his weapons, except for his Canoptic Tail Blades. Did you know he got those, John?
I do now.
No, you don't. All right. So
okay, I don't. I thought I knew now.
Now you do. He gets D6 extra attacks at -2 AP. Pretty good. So he's still got Necrodermis. He's still got Enslaved Star God. He's still got Reality Unravels when he dies. And he has the Matter Absorption. So if he kills vehicles, he can heal a wound. So of all the Satan, he's definitely the most survivable. And again, he gets 2 powers, so does Nightbringer. Now, all of these guys are 350 points a model. 350 points, not 250.
So did you say 250?
No, 350.
It's got to be a mistake.
Yeah, I think that they're worth the points. Sort of. I think it's like if you want to take this unit, take this, because I think that if you are a good player, you'll make it work. But I don't think it's like a be-all, end-all unit. I mean, I think it's a choice that you can make if you want to. I just don't think it's like a gimme.
It's a great distraction unit.
For sure.
Because you have to deal with them.
God, I hope so. For 350 points,
Right.
it better be a great distraction.
It's like, but you have to deal with them. You're doing max 3 wounds a phase on them, so you have to, at least 3 phases of concentrated effort.
Right.
So, yeah.
I do like that I don't care if I have to keep them close to my units or not.
Right.
So they can go off and be actually threatening. So, yeah, and don't fly flyers around them and that kind of stuff, because they all have fly as well.
Yep.
And they'll go and punch you right in your stupid face. The Transcendence Satan is a little bit more affordable. He's
He's your 2-door
a bargain bin Satan.
A 2-door Satan.
Oh, that's so bad, John.
So bad.
Yeah. Anyway, he's at 270 points. So you're literally saving 80 points on him. He has crackling tendrils, so he does D6 damage on his attacks, which is pretty good. But they are just strength 6, so yeah. Anyway, still 5 attacks, still gets Necrodermis, still gets Enslaved Star God, still has Living Metal, still has Reality Unravels, but he also has Fractured Personality. So you can roll 2 dice. And I like this now, if you do roll a double, they tell you to roll again instead of just saying if you roll a double, you're screwed. So he's got, let's see, Cosmic Tyrant. He can use 2 Satan powers instead of just 1, and he can only use 1 Satan power instead of 2 like the other ones. He can take Unnatural Law, or Immune to Natural Law, just like me. Each time an attack is made against this model, an unmodified wound of 1 through 3 always fails, which is nice. That just makes him a little bit tougher. My favorite one is Sentient Necrodermis. This model has a save stat characteristic of 3+. Oh, but that doesn't mean he has a 4-up invulnerable save.
No.
Oh, that one's bad. You don't want to get that one. That one's bad. Then you have Transdimensional Displacement. This model gains the Transdimensional Location ability, so you can deep strike him if you so desire. You've got Untamed Power. This model has an attack characteristic of 6 and a strength characteristic of 7. That's nice. And then you have Writhing Worldscape. At the start of your movement phase, roll a d6 for each enemy unit within engagement range of this model. On a 4+, they take 1 mortal wound. In addition, when this model declares a charge... In addition, each time a unit declares a charge against this model, until the end of the phase, subtract 2 from charge rolls made for that unit. That's pretty cool. That's good. -2 to charge is really annoying. Especially if you want to get to grips with him because you've done 3 wounds in shooting, and then you want to assault him. Well, it's going to be a little harder, it turns out. All right, John.
Yes.
My all-time favorite unit from the Codex is coming up. Second favorite unit from the Codex is coming up. And like the sleeper hit. We're not talking about the Doomstalker.
Okay.
Yet. We're going to get to the Doomstalker. The Canoptic Spiders are my Danny's hot pick from this book.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm making that up. I just made that up.
I'm not making a graphic for that.
Can you please? I can give you some pictures.
Okay.
All right. So their stats got a huge buff. They are 6 wounds now. They went to toughness 6. They have 5 attacks each. All great things. Now, there's still weapon skill 4-ups. So you're like, okay, whatever. That's not great, Danny. But what they do get is they get to use the Cryptex with the Canoptic, like the Canoptic Harness or the Canoptic Command Node, and that gives them to weapon scale 3+, or +1 to hit, which is great because they also have Automaton Claws, which means that they're +2 strength, -3 AP, 2 flat damage, so they throw out 5 strength 8 Power Fist attacks
Really good.
each, and they can be in a unit of 1 through 3. In addition to this, you can throw on that Cryptex Arcana piece to give them all +D3 attacks.
So you'd have up to 8 of those.
8 attacks each, so up to 24 attacks from the unit. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty good. You can also give them for 5 points each Fabricator Claw raise, so they can heal vehicles for D3 wounds, in addition to Living Metal. And then a Gloom Prism. So as long as you have 1 Gloom Prism, they can heal, or they can deny a power of a Psyker.
Yes.
And you can also give them 2 Particle Beamers if you want to do that. I mean, it's like 12 Strength 5 shots each. That's pretty good. But I don't know if that's worth 10 points or not. That seems like a lot. Anyway, they gained Living Metal, so they can heal a wound every turn. They gained Reanimation Protocols, so if you're feeling spicy and can roll 6 5-ups, like you can bring one back when it dies. Or you can use that relic, the Cryptex relic, and bring back a Canoptic Spider, which is also pretty good. They explode now. So on a 6, they do a 1 mortal wound to each unit within 3. And then they have a Scarab Hide, where as long as a Scarab unit is below its starting strength value or its starting value, you can bring back a Scarab for each spider.
So you can run them into combat to all of your awful attacks. Choose to blow up the Scarab base with the stratagem, and then bring back the Scarab base.
Yeah, in your next command phase, I believe.
And then do it again.
Yeah, in your command phase. Yeah, sure, why not?
Just puking out bombs.
Yep. So yeah, I really like those guys. 60 points a model, 5 points for all the upgrades. I think that they form like a really great counterattack unit for less than 200 points. I don't know that they're necessarily better than Litchguard or the Destroyers at like actually fighting, but they're pretty close, and they also give some utility, so I quite like them. I think they're good for their points. All right, Canoptic Scare Swarm, maybe the best unit in the entire book. Even if it's not my favorite unit, like it's a workhorse. And I said it during an interview on Dangly Boys. I felt like it was, I'm going to take 15 of them every single game. I kind of reevaluated that. I'm definitely going to take 10. But I'm probably going to take 15. Just in case I want to take another fast attack unit, right? Because it's only 15 points a base, and they have 4 wounds now, and they have the feeder mandibles. So they wound on 6 is to hit auto wound. And they have living metal and reanimation now, too.
Sure.
So they can get back up if you kill a bunch of them. Like, I'm just waiting for that Intercessor squad to shoot them with like all of its shots and kill like 4 bases, and for me to bring back 2, and my opponent just to be like, no. And they can be OBSEC if you so desire as well. Don't forget about that, guys. Affinity Destroyers. So Affinity Destroyers, they did preview their data sheet. They're 35 points a model, so same as the Scorpex. They're less tough. They have less strength, so they're only strength and toughness 4. And they have a 4+ armor save instead of a 3+ armor save. Now, they do move 10 inches, which is great. And they can burrow, so they can come up from underground, which is also good. They have a couple of rules that make them give them a few more attacks, I guess. Like they have whip coil bodies, so you're -1 to hit them in combat. And they get a bunch of attacks. Plus, they have the Ophidian claws, so they get an extra 2 attacks per model at AP -1. I think these guys are really good in Novoke, the close combat kind of style army, because like they can pop up, they charge on an 8 with a reroll is pretty good. They get a ton of attacks, and they probably are going to get hurt on the counterpunch. But man, can they do a bunch of damage? So I like them okay. I don't think that they're quite as good as the Scorpex. Got Toon Blades. Toon Blades is the final core unit that we're going to be talking about today. So Toon Blades are core, which is great. So that means you can right to the Reanimator them, which I like. Same stat line, still toughness 5, still 2 wounds base. The particle beamer went up to 6 shots, which is pretty nice, and it's also free. So they start at 25 points a model, and it's 5 points to give them either Twin Gauss or Twin Tesla. So they are technically cheaper than they were before, but you're probably going to spend another 3 points to give them Shield Veins, which gives them a 3+ armor save instead of a 4+. And they're still -1 to hit from shooting. I think they're still a pretty good unit, and they're pretty tough and hard to get rid of, like still 2 wounds, all of that. I don't know. It's hard for me to want to take them quite as much because it's a little bit harder to bring back the multi-wound units. All right. Next, we have Triarch Praetorians. These guys are probably one of the most improved units in this Codex. So they're like 33 points with Shield Veins. Triarch Praetorians are 25 points a model. Man, they are good. They have 3 base attacks now. They get damage 2 weapons in the Rod of the Covenant, which is great. They are Marine killers. Like, they will ace a unit of Marines, no problem. They get living metal, they get reanimation protocols. They did lose the auto pass morale tests, which is kind of a bummer. But I think they're a great unit, and they moved from elites to fast attack, which I also like. Then finally, in fast attack, we have the Canoptic Wraiths. And so the Wraiths changed quite a bit. Their stat line became very different. They were weapon skill, ballistic skill 3+, strength 6, toughness 5. Now they're strength 4. They went from 3 attacks to 4 attacks. Their weapons kind of made up for it. So the Vicious Claws are make them strength 6 and -2 AP, which is nice because that brings them back to where they were at. And then their Whip Coils, if you want to take those instead, those let them multi-attack. So a model with Whip Coils throws out 8 attacks at strength 4 -1 AP. So good for horde clearing for sure. If you can get them in for that, I think that they're probably one of the better units in the book. Or if you can give them +1 attack each, so they get 5 attacks each, that's pretty nice. So they got Slinking Strike. Oh, they also have Living Metal, Reanimation, Command Protocols. Slinking Strike lets them fall back and shoot or charge. And then they have the Wraith form went from a 3+ invul to a 4+ invul, but you can also move through terrain and models when you advance or falls back. And you can move horizontally through terrain features, but not necessarily vertically. You have to pay for that movement because they kind of float through it. Great unit, though. I would definitely take them. All right, yeah, like I was saying, favorite unit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Kanoptic Doomstalker. So the Kanoptic Doomstalker is power level 7,
Okay.
which is nice. So he's 140 points, which is up from 130, which is what he started with, but he had very different rules. He's got 12 wounds, toughness 6. He's got ballistic skill 4 up, and you're like, well, ballistic skill 4 up is pretty bad. Like, that's a guard tank. Nobody takes, like, normal guard tanks. They always take tank commanders. Well, keep in mind that you can just give him, or have a Cryptex hang around, like a battery of these guys if you want to, and be giving them all +1 to hit. Which is
Patting them on the leg, telling them they're doing a good job.
Good job, buddy. You're doing it. So they have the same weapon as the Doomsday Arc, which is rad. Although it's a Doomsday Blaster, and the Doomsday Arc has the Doomsday Cannon. So it is technically a little bit different in the range values. So if they move, it goes to 24 inches, and the high-powered one is 48 instead of 72. So, okay, it's a little different, but pretty much it's the same gun. And then they have Living Metal Command Protocols. They also have a Containment Field, which means instead of the Quantum Shielding of always wound on no better than a 4+ and a 5+ invul, they just have a 4+ invulnerable save, which is quite nice. And then they have the Sentinel Construct rule. Each time an enemy unit declares a charge against a friendly Dynasty or Dynastic Agent unit within 6 inches of this model, unless this model is within engagement range of any enemy models, this model can fire Overwatch at the charging unit as if it were also a target of that charge. This is in addition to any other units firing Overwatch. Each time this model fires Overwatch, it makes attacks with its Doomsday Blaster using the high-powered profile. So even if it moved, if you charge my guys close to me, then I get to fire Overwatch on you with the big boy gun. That is so good. Like, free Overwatch on them anytime somebody charges you, and it's not once per phase or anything like that. It's all of them. So, like, if I have a big unit of 20 warriors and I back it up with 3 Canoptic Doomstalkers, like, walking behind them, if you charge the warriors at all, I'm going to get 3d6 shots on Doomsday Cannons at strength 10 on you. Like, that's going to be harsh. Plus, the warriors might overwatch you too. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's very good. And for their points cost of 140, super solid. And I really like them. Ghost Arc. Ghost Arc is kind of a solid transport. It went up 5 points. It still has the same stats except for the 3-up armor save now and the new quantum shielding. Repair Barge has changed. So before it lets you roll reanimation again for a warrior unit within 3 inches. Now, pick a warrior unit within 6 inches of this model. If you do so, return D3 destroyed models. D3 destroyed models reanimate. so they just come back. You can spend 1 point and make it D6 if you want to with the stratagem, which is pretty good. So that's just a good way to kind of help keep your warrior units kind of at the top level, or at least with some guys in the squad, kind of help with attrition. I quite like those two. Doom Scythes went up by a bunch of points. They went up to 200 points. But from 170 to 200 is a lot. So they do have the new Heavy Death Ray, which is different than the normal Death Ray. The Heavy Death Ray is an extra death.
Of course.
So it went from a D3 shot, strength 10 minus 4, D6 damage gun, to a heavy 3, strength 12 minus 4, D3 plus 3 damage gun. Man, that's a good weapon. And like they have all the other same special rules they had. They don't have the Vindicator Linebreaker Squadron stratagem that they used to, which is fine, because you're probably not going to take more than 1 or 2 anyway, I think. But I think it's a pretty good vehicle. Still has Living Metal, still has command protocols, all that stuff. The Night Scythe is the same. Their twin Tesla Destructor did change from 24-inch range to 36, and from heavy 8 to heavy 10. On both the Night Scythe and the Doom Scythe. Night Scythe is also 145 points. So the Night Scythe and the Doomsday or the Ghost Arc have the same points value. So it's going to depend on which one you want to use to try and transport your units up the table. So the Night Scythe can hold 20 core infantry, dynasty infantry characters, or dynasty or dynastic agent infantry models. So instead of them having to be stuck on the Tomb World in reserve, in strategic reserve, you can just have them come in through. You can literally just have them jump out of the Night Scythe. They just have to make the test to see if they die when they jump out of a Night Scythe exploding. So that's awesome. I love that. I think that's great. I'm very happy about that. All right, Lord of War. Necron have 4 Lord of War choices. Maybe you were probably asking yourself, well, where's the monolith? Guess what, guys? The monolith is a Lord of War choice now. It got too many wounds.
It's embiggened.
So 360 base, 5 points each if you want to upgrade the Gauss Flare arcs to the Death Ray, which is heavy 1, strength 9, minus 3, D3 plus 3 damage. It still has Death Descending, so it gets the Deep Strike if it wants to. It has the Eternity Gate, so it can take models or during the reinforcement step, you can select 1 Dynasty Core Infantry model that is in strategic reserve and set that unit up anywhere within 3 inches of this model and not in engagement range of any enemy model. So that's before the monolith moves. The monolith has to remain stationary in order to do that. My mistake. So that's pretty cool. And there's some stratagem and stuff to teleport units to a monolith from across the table, which I think is pretty fun. So I think there's definitely some really fun ways to use the monolith. I wish it wasn't a super heavy, so I had to buy another detachment to take him. That's kind of sad, but kind of okay too, I guess. I don't know. I'm going to play around with him for sure and see if I like him. Then we have the Obelisk. The Obelisk is greatly improved, I feel like. It's only 370, so it's not even more expensive necessarily than the Monolith. The Monolith also got a 2-up armor save. I did not say that before, but that is a really good ability. That means it basically is a 5-up invul against most big guns, and a 6-up invul against things like Melta and things like that, which will probably become very prevalent. The Obelisk is 28 wounds. Still, it also has a 2-up armor save. It still has the same Tesla spheres, which are Assault 4, Strength 7, no AP, 1 damage, and then they get Tesla. However, it has the Hovering Sentinel rule, where if it remains stationary until the start of your next movement phase, all the Tesla spheres become Assault 6, Strength 8, and 2 damage. So that's pretty good, because that's a lot of shots that you're throwing out of this Obelisk. Let's see, what is it? 6 times 4, so 24, Strength 8 shots, that 2 flat damage. So you better not fail any armor saves, Primaris Marines, because you're going down. And then it has the Gravity Pulse. So in your shooting phase, you can select 1 enemy unit that can fly within 24, have their move characteristic.
Huh.
If it's an aircraft, roll 2d6. For each point that you beat their toughness by, it also takes a mortal wound. So both of those are great abilities.
Yeah.
Those are really nice. And it can deep strike. Tesseract Arc pretty much hasn't changed. It does have a 2+ armor save now. And it has 30 wounds and a 4-up invul. It's 500 points. So if you want to take it, you can. It knows 4 Satan powers and it gets bonuses when it uses those, which we went over. When it dies on a 4+, it explodes and does a 2d6 range aura of d6 mortals. So that hurts. The Monolith and Obelisk also explode for d6 mortals on a 6. Or you can spend 3 command points and have them auto-explode.
Oh. Just like.
Yeah, you should. All right, Silent King. Oh my god, this guy has so many rules. All right. So the Silent King is, they previewed all of his stats, so we don't have to go over those. They didn't tell you about all of his weapons, only some of them. So in addition to the Scepter of Eternal Glory and the Annihilator Beam, he also gets the Staff of Stars in shooting and melee, and also the Scythe of Dust. So the Staff of Stars is a Strength 6 Staff of Light that does 9 shots. And then in melee, it's just 2 more Strength 5 attacks, 3 Strength 5 attacks at -2. And then the Scythe of Dust is 4 extra attacks at Strength 8, -4, 3 flat damage. So that's pretty good. Yeah. And then we have, let's see here. So yeah, and that's in addition to the 4 or the 6 Strength 9 attacks that the actual Silent King gets. All right, so things he didn't talk about. Let's see. He's got Living Metal. He's got Command Protocols. He's got the Noctilith Beacons to deny psychic power. Let's see here. He's got Fight Last for everybody in melee with him. He's got Pharaoh of the Stars. So Necron Core Triarch Praetorians within 6 inches of him can re-roll to hit rolls for shooting. And then Pharaoh of the Blades is Necron Core units or Triarch Praetorians within 6 inches of him can reroll to wound rolls within 6. He's got Relentless March, so Necron Core or Triarch Praetorians within 6 are +1 to move in advance. He's got My Will Be Done and Pharaon, so he can do 2 Necron Core or Triarch Praetorian units to get +1 to hit. He's got Voice of the Triarch. Once per battle, at the start of the battle round, if Cesaric is on the battlefield, he can alter your command protocol. So you can switch out your command protocol to the one that you didn't use if you want to swap that out. Because
as long as you didn't rip it up in front of your opponent as a power play.
Well, if you did, you can still use it. Just throw the confetti in his face. And then you have the Triarchal Menhir. When this unit controls any Triarch Menhirs, it does not count as a character for the purposes of Lookout, sir. Okay, that's fine. He wouldn't count anyway. And each time an attack is successfully wounds the unit, you have to allocate to the Menhirs before you allocate to the Silent King himself. And note, he does not have reanimation protocols, so you can't bring back the Menhirs. Yeah. And the destruction of them is ignored for morale purposes. If he's ever destroyed, any other tactical Menhirs in your list are also destroyed. So somehow if you manage to wound him first with something that, like where you get to pick who gets wounded, you could potentially totally avoid the Menhirs and just do 16 wounds to him, right? I guess that's kind of the...
Show me that list though, please.
Yeah, right. All right, so the Silent King himself, if he's your warlord, you get 3 extra command points. Pretty good. And he has... Trans-temporal force field. So models in this unit have a 4-up invulnerable save as well. So nice. The Menhirs and him.
Oh.
Because they're part of the unit.
Nice.
So he has like 10 toughness 7 4-up invul saves that you have to get through. Before you get to the crunchy or the soft inner layer of 16 toughness 7 wounds with 4+ invulnerable save.
The soft inner is the same as the tough outer.
Yeah. If he has 8 or fewer wounds, he loses his Staff of the Stars. And if he has 4 or fewer wounds, you can't use the Scythe of Dust. That makes sense. And that's fine. And then finally, if he's destroyed, the Enchained Satan that he has as powering his altar, a 4+ explosion for D6 mortal wounds. All right, the last data sheet. I know, Convergence of Dominion. So this is the Necron fortification. I actually have been thinking about taking these. I'm gonna have to play around with them. I think that they might be really good for like line of sight blocking for characters, or even blocking for characters for Lookout Sir, because they are 10 wounds. So I don't know. I'll have to play around with them. Anyway, you get 3 of them for 100. Oh, sorry. Cesaric is 450 points if you want to take the Silent King.
Which seems fair for all he does.
He does a lot, and for him to be like roughly the same amount of points as a shooting knight is probably pretty fair. Like, I think that's a fair point cost for him. I don't think it's too undercosted or too overcosted. I really think it's right where it should be almost. Anyway, Convergence of Dominion. You get 3 10-wound vehicles with toughness 8 and a 3+ armor save. They have living metal, so they do heal every turn too. Cool. Because it's a structure. Why haven't they healed all the battle damage that they have? That's what I want to know.
Because it looks cool.
It does, you're right. The interior workings are still working, just the facade is,
Judge a book by its
crumbling.
cover, or
Right.
man her by its metal.
Or stone, or whatever it is. It's just drywall. Anyway, so you set them up. They don't have to be set up in coherency. Instead, each model must be set up within 12 inches, wholly within 12 inches of another model from its unit. So you can spread them out pretty far. I mean, I would say, like, you probably have like a 24-inch bubble at least that you can probably deploy them in pretty easily, which is pretty good. And then friendly Dynasty core units within 6 get +2 leadership. Man, nothing like having leadership 12 on your core units, right? And then it has dynastic control nodes, so command protocols you can use as long as the unit's within 6 of one of the menhirs as well, which is nice. They have translocation protocols, so Cryptex units can be close to them and activate them, and then teleport them around the table. So you basically after he uses his action, he picks one up. And then during your next command phase, you can put it anywhere on the table. So using these to block off an objective is probably pretty good. And they still have to be 9 inches away from the enemy, of course. But if you can do it on turn 1 and your enemy isn't able to capitalize on an objective, you can just deep strike all around it and control it. So yeah, that's pretty good.
It goes pretty well with that secondary, like the Necron specific one about
keeping people out of
specific secondary.
Oh, sure. I was going to say keeping people out of your deployment zone.
Oh, that too.
Just make a wall of these things, and you can't get in there.
Grimdark, Asterix, and Obelix is really bad.
And they have a shooting attack. They get D3 shots each, 12-inch range, strength 4, -3, 3 flat damage, which is not bad. And then weapon profiles. All right, so I'm not going to go through each weapon profile, but you should definitely check them out. They're in each unit entry pretty much as well. And if they're not, then you can find them in here. There's a lot of new weapons. All right, so let's talk about the points page. I don't necessarily know if I love the new points, the way that they have these laid out. It's a little confusing. But I think that just is probably something I just need to get used to, right? But you can go through all the points on these pages. It's pretty easy to see what costs what. And it gives Games Workshop a little bit more granularity in that they can change the point costs for a particular option for a particular character if they end up becoming a problem, which is cool. Like if it's undervalued for a particular unit. And if there's no option on here for buying it, then that means it's free. So most of the units just come with the stuff that they want, which is cool. Yeah, so check those out. And then we also have this here. There is a glossary of all the different, of a bunch of different keywords and things like that that you need to know. So definitely check those out. And then finally, we have a reference sheet. So what command protocols are, what detachment abilities are, what dimensional translocation is, what a dynastic code is, what reanimation is, and kind of some trimmed down reference to what those actually are. So, man, what a great book. It's pretty cool. I like the new Necron Codex a lot, I think. I think it has a really different playstyle than the previous version of the book. I think it does reward some amount of recursion in your army. I think warriors are something you want to take, but you don't need to take an entire army of warriors. You can take a bunch of other stuff too. Just don't count on anything really getting back up again, I would say. You can try your hardest. The 1 wound stuff gets back up pretty easily, but the bigger guys just don't. And so just be aware of that and spend and use them appropriately with that in mind. I think you just have to be a little bit more careful with that stuff. Whereas the warriors, you can just kind of throw up the table and make them do stuff. Hopefully they do something important. So that's my review of the Necron Codex. If you enjoyed this review, check out some of our other reviews for different books as Games Workshop posts them, or post them to us, I should say. And we also have every other week we have our podcast, Mob Rules. So check us out on there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is what you're watching right now. And if you have any questions, tell us what you think about the Necron Codex in the comments below, and I'll have John respond to you. All right, have a good one.